why that Bridgerton season 3 trailer was so good? Because I came out of it knowing as little as I did when I went into it. Got everything I needed. Colin, Penelope, look good, tension. Canthony, more Bridgerton siblings, tension, more tension, drama, that's it. Eloise, still mad. Like, the art of the trailer has slowly dwindled. They tell us everything in those 2 minutes. I don't want to know anything. I want to know the vibe.
I 100% believe that a lot of Republican American Christians would have absolutely hated Jesus if he was around today. The Good Samaritan of back then would have been the good Muslim of today. The Mary Magdalene washing Jesus' feet would have been a Mexican immigrant. An illegal one. Yeah. The prostitutes that he hung out with would have been transgender people. That man made it his mission to go to the most cast aside members of society and show them that they have a place with him. Oh, y'all, I'm telling you, they would have hated him. Oh, they would have hated him so bad. That man would have fed the 5,000 and they would have called him a socialist. Oh my God. What, Jesus? You don't want them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps? Are you crazy? Constantly being disgusted by and turning away anybody who doesn't look and act just like you. Yeah, that's not, you would have hated Jesus. You would have hated that man for sure. I remember growing up as a Christian and I had this one church leader. I'm not gonna say, like, I would not say that this man is like a bad person or anything. I would just say that like his views are a little interesting, right? Because I remember him telling me when I was younger that he does not like to give homeless people money. I remember asking why. And he said, it's because when you give them money, they're not gonna know what to do with it. They're gonna spend it on things, on like bad things, like essentially, right? But then a little bit later in life, I remember going to that same person and talking about like ranting about the fact that it just bothers me so much that rich people have they have such a plethora, they have so much and they can see so many people suffering and they would not be like, let me just take from this and just serve them, right? And this same man looked at me and said, I do not like to tell people what to do with the money that God has given them. Really? Because you see, when we were wallet watching the poor, that was acceptable. That was fine as a Christian. But doing the same to the rich, doing the same to the powerful, that's wrong. That's where we draw the line. See, in the Bible, Jesus had a lot of story examples. He had a lot of parables, right? And there was this one specific one where he talked about a poor widow and how she had almost nothing. She had almost no money left to her name. She had like just two copper coins or whatever, right? Even knowing that she had nothing, she gave all of it, all of her nothing to Jesus, right? She's just like, I'm just gonna give this all, right? She's giving more than even the richest people would. She had nothing, but she still gave it up to Jesus. If that man had been around and had given that message today, they would have called him a socialist. They would have called him a communist. They would have called that man everything but his name. It reminds me a lot of my mom growing up. My mom, I feel like, had that very big, like, generous Christian love where we were not rich, you know? We lived in I know you're gonna see this and you're gonna be, you didn't have to say that, it's fine. We lived in a smaller house, right? And any family member, family friend was coming from out of town, she was like, don't you dare spend your money at a hotel, even though I have this little space. It is for you. I will cook for you. You have the bed. Me and my kids will sleep on the floor, which was annoying, but we would do it. You know, she had this whole entire thing. Like that was the example. That was the Christian example my mother set for me. I grew up and I went to college and I went to a Republican American Christian church, you know. Republican first, American next, Christian last. That church, that kind of church, right? There was an international student that was attending there, and that student had run into some financial problems, and they needed some place to stay. So they had some friends, stayed with those friends, but some of the members in the church were concerned about the legality of subletting or whatever. Just need to have this as a background. Multiple members of this church had spare bedrooms. Multiple. Lots of them had houses with spare bedrooms. And the church also had a spare house for whenever visitors came to town. Yes? Okay, so keep all of that in mind. This international student who was an avid member of that church, who was constantly helping, constantly putting their time in to help grow this church. They sat the student down and instead of offering their place, instead of offering assistance, they said, maybe these troubles you're having are God's way of telling you that you should go back to your country. That is that Republican American Christian love right there. My mother would sooner die before she let something like that happen. I have a governor heavily supported by the Republican American Christians who will just put into place a law that says that homeless people do not have the right to be sleeping in public spaces overnight. So they would be criminalized as homeless people for sleeping in public spaces overnight. And Republican American Christians would say, this is good. This is exactly what God would want me to support. This is what Jesus would want to happen. That is what they would tell me. Are you insane? Making a point to constantly demonize the poor, to constantly demonize the people who are the most ostracized from society, whilst also exalting the rich, exalting the most powerful, those who take the most advantage of society, those who the Bible warned me against. not the kind of Christianity I want to support. Loving my neighbor with my whole heart and soul, that's the kind of Christianity I want. The kind of Christianity that others who are ostracized from society and ostracized from their own Christian churches feel comfortable coming to me about different things going on in their lives. That's the kind of Christian I want to be. Let me give you a quick definition of the modern day Pharisee. A modern day Pharisee is someone who follows the impulse to be seen as righteous by obeying certain laws while ignoring more important matters of the heart. Do you see that in yourself? Do you only surround yourself as a Christian with people who look like, act like, and think like you? Well, you still have time to be better. You still have time to change. Do with that what you will. Bye.
You are my best friend. I love you. You're my best friend. I sit next to you every day. Here's a prized family heirloom that could feed a family for months because I care about you that much. Okay, she walks like a friend and she talks like a friend, but is she actually a friend? How do I know when somebody is my friend? I have a fat crush on you. I have a fat crush on you. I know that you're gonna have a hard time believing this because everything is so pretend right now, but maybe if I announce it on national television, that'll be the way you know I'm actually being honest about it because, like, who would admit that in front of millions of people? You know, I have a fat crush on you. I am in love with you. Have my children. Clearly this boy who has never so much as smashed a spider is just trying to get me to trust him so that he can be out for blood in the arena because he's a bloodthirsty killer. Hello, Katniss. My name is Plutarch Heavensby. I'm in a fun little club called the Rebellion. We all have secret watches. Look at my secret rebel watch. This is my rebel watch. Rebellion watch. I'm going to a secret rebel meeting after this banquet, and you're not allowed to tell anybody. Look at my rebel watch. Why is this man so excited about his watch? I am the most insufferable person you've ever met, and I do not give a fuck about the fact that you just went through the most excruciating trauma you've ever imagined because I want a kiss. Gale, my Gale, what a good friend. I love him so much.
On today's installment of Team Conrad, we'll get on here and lie to your face, and you should not trust anything a Bonrad tells you on the internet, and most of them have seemingly never picked up these precious books that they love to talk about. I can't believe we have to do this again, but we do. So the official Summer I Turn Pretty posted this lovely edit on all their socials of Jeremiah calling Belly Bells, and it's so cute. This might be my favorite thing they ever posted. It's one of them, but there are a bunch of Bonrads in the comments being like, well, this is what Conrad called her in the books. They changed it in the show. No, they didn't. Nope. Lies, minutia, propaganda. In the books, Bells is something that they seemingly all called her when she was younger, and Jeremiah never stopped using it and uses it consistently in present day. Conrad uses it twice in two questionable situations, much like the show. First time we hear Bells is by Jeremiah in book 1 when he says, but you were the best, Bells, and this is not out of the ordinary for him. He continues to call her this throughout the rest of the series. Conrad uses it twice total, only in book 1. Here he says, sure, good night, Bells, and she romanticizes it because this is not something he usually does. He's drunk, by the way, and she's like, Bells, my nickname from 1,000 years ago. It made it so hard not to love him when he was sweet like this. Isabel, he was not being sweet, but obviously this is out of the ordinary for him because Jeremiah has been calling her Bells, and that's just what he calls her. And then the only other time he does it in book 1 is when he's doling out a breadcrumb. This is before he tells her to go look in the mirror some more, and he says, come on, Bells. He most certainly did not invent that nickname. There's nothing to allude to that, and this is the only time he uses it. Contrarily, Jeremiah uses it all throughout book 1, and then in book 2, Bells is used a total of 6 times, all by Jeremiah. Then in book 3, we'll always have Summer. Bells is used a total of 9 times, all by Jeremiah and none for Conrad. And likewise, the only time Conrad uses Bells in the show is in the car when he has a motive and is being a condescending jerk and deliberately trying to devalue their relationship and entire connection. So there you have it. Likewise, Jacob calls Bella Bells in Twilight, not Edward ever. So just remember, they will get on here and say anything, no receipts, just lies, falsehoods, and deception, period. This is so true, and I just wanted to make a little disclaimer because I know a lot of people who come across my content or other content about this show have not read the books, and they get their information about the books from mostly like Bonrads and Conrad stands talking about the books. You have been lied to. If that is the case, you have heard some absolute BS about what happened in those books. No receipts, no proof, just lies, betrayal, and deceit. And if they do pull a receipt, it's only going to be from the 3rd book because they don't have any. They don't want any from books 1 and 2. And then even their book 3 receipts, if on the rare occasion they pull one, it's taken entirely out of context and they ignore everything about Cobweb. Like, I've had so many people ask me, like, I love Jeremiah, but I'm really afraid to read the books, or I haven't read the books in a really long time. Like, am I going to hate him in book 3? Like, no, probably not. If you already love Jeremiah, like, I think you're going to have the critical thinking skills to understand what happens in that book. You will hate the book. Like, you will hate We'll Always Have Summer, and it will make you want to rip your hair out, to be clear. I love Jenny's work, but We'll Always Have Summer can respectfully choke, and I always say that. But if you read it after preconceived notions about what you were heard, you're just going to be mad that you were lied to. Jeremiah's a cheater. How often we hear that? No, he literally didn't. Not that Jeremiah never did anything wrong in his whole life, but every single bad thing you hear about him, even in book 3, is taken entirely out of context, and a lot of it is just lies. Conrad is a bum in those books. He is still a bum in book 3. They don't even have a relationship. Like, when I tell you, they barely interact in those books, Belly and Conrad. Conrad did not include her as a kid or spend time with her. That was Jeremiah. There is no evidence, not even in those rancid letters, that Conrad took Belly to the boardwalk to win her junior mint. He actually admits to trying to hook up with the girl. Those letters you hear about, they're not like Captain Wentworth's letter, something seriously romantic. Like, they're really bad. Borderline harassment. Like, he's still negging her. Jeremiah is terrible in the books, and just wait till you get to book 3, and Jeremiah's a cheater, and he's a lazy frat boy, and he ordered Indian food because he's a bad boyfriend. They lie. They made it up. It's BS. They don't want to give him credit for anything. Part of the reason I'm saying this is because I just saw a comment that said Belly and Jeremiah were just taking space when they broke up, and therefore Jeremiah should have known that they weren't really broken up. That is a lie. There is no such conversation or terminology used in those books. We've shown the receipts how many times? Like, you can see it. I have my pinned video. I have so many videos like showing the receipts. They explicitly broke up. Like, they lied. They lied to you. All this to say, don't be afraid of those books. Like, don't acknowledge them or read them if you don't want to. But as somebody who has, if you did read them, you would find that you were lied to. You would also find that the person who benefits the most from the show adaptation, the person who has been given the most favors, and often at Jeremiah's expense, was Conrad, not Jeremiah. But Jeremiah stands, Jelly stands. Yes, those books will break your heart. They will not make you Team Conrad. I promise. That's not gonna happen. So this is a really good comment. It says, it's times like these, I wish there was no source material. Would the Jeremiah slander be as bad without the books, I wonder? And this brings up so many points that I wanted to talk about. The answer is literally no, but I do think it's layered. And for me, I want to preface by saying that I don't wish there was no source material. You guys think I do. I do not hate the books. I actually really love the books. Me and We'll Always Have Summer book 3 have long-term, long-standing beef. I've always been very upfront about that. But despite everything, I do really like the books. I always have. But the answer is, if there were no books, then no, the Jeremiah slander would not be as bad, because then they don't have a leg to stand on. Not that they actually have the leg they think they do in the book, but that's why you're always hearing like, wait until book 3, wait until Lacey Perrone, and wait until Cabo and the wedding engagement. And without that, they have absolutely nothing, right? Because Jeremiah is objectively the better love interest in the show thus far, just like he is in the books. And might I add that he is still the better love interest in book 3. Most Jeremiah girlies, we have read book 3 and we don't hate him after book 3. Like, we have our beef with that book, but we still love Jeremiah. Jeremiah is not even like top 3 biggest clowns in that book. He's not even top 5 as usual. He is the most sympathetic character in that book. But what's so annoying, and part of why I talk about the book so much, and the fact that I get asked to your point, is that these people can't even get their own book slander right. Because, well, yes, the books or book 3 provides them with confirmation of the endgame, their one-page endgame on the last page in the epilogue, where she didn't even choose Conrad over Jeremiah, right? It doesn't actually make Conrad look like a good love interest or a good person. And if they were smart, they would never mention those books, because book Conrad is not something they want to get into, because they will get told every time with receipts how terrible he is. Like, if you thought he was bad in the show, pick up those books and see how you were lied to. So in conclusion, while I do personally have a fondness for the books, I totally understand your sentiment, because no, without the source material, there would not be as much Jeremiah slander. But then again, you have to wonder, because they don't actually even know what kind of slander they're talking about in the books. Like, most of them prove time and time again that they haven't actually read them. But to end on a positive note, what a cute picture. Oh my God, they got married. So somebody left a bunch of comments on that video talking about book 3 Jeremiah and how he was a lazy frat boy and a horrible boyfriend because he didn't help with the wedding planning and beep bop boo whatever. And you can see all my replies, but what happened was they were proven wrong and then had nothing to say and then blocked me as they do. So just in case anybody else wants to try it, and I'm sure they will, not only am I not afraid of those books, but I will personally protect book 3 Jeremiah from harm. I will always protect him, but I would urgently highly advise you to keep that frat boy's name out of your mouth unless you want to look really stupid. Because I've already talked about this, but the whole Jeremiah didn't show up for wedding planning and he was late and Conrad stepped up. False narrative. First of all, as much as you hear people praise Cobweb for, oh, he's a doctor and he's such a good student, as if that makes him like a good person or a good love interest, I would like to add that the reason Jeremiah wasn't there all the time is because unlike Joe and Schmo, he actually had a job. Belly Button quit on a whim, and Danny Phantom conveniently had nothing better to do than haunt the house, so let's start there. I will have you know that Jeremiah also asked Belly if he should quit so he could help more, and Belly said no, he's not allowed to quit. I will also have you know that he was never not showing up, and he was actually never even late. I already did a video on this, but Belly low-key set him up for failure. It's in this playlist where I have all the receipts and everything, but the one time where he was supposedly late, he actually wasn't even late. If you look at the timestamps, Jeremiah was not actually late despite having a job that he wasn't just hanging around at leisurely for fun. Belly jumped the gun to go to Michael's with Condiment, and she also kind of set him up for failure anyway, doing it on a day that he was working anyway when she could have just done it on the weekend when he was there. It was stupid. The whole thing was stupid, but he wasn't even late. He did what he was supposed to do. He was set up for failure, and if you read the book, if you actually critically look at what is happening in the book, that is what happens through the entirety of the book. He's just set up again and again, and it's very sad to watch. And even though we conveniently don't have his POV, you just know he must have felt that every time. That's why, like, book 3 Jeremiah, like, nothing is more, like, heartbreaking than that. So don't start with me. And I could get into the whole thing about immaturity, whatever. Jeremiah is by far the most emotionally mature out of the 3 of them, especially in that book, and by far a better person than this clown convention we had going on in that book. And how, like, the only thing that indicates that Belly and Conrad would be, like, meant to be in that book is that they can go be trash bags together and they should leave Jeremiah alone. But I don't even believe that in my heart because it's just too sad. But the point is, like, don't start with me. One more thing, don't say to Jellyfish, don't say to Team Jeremiah, oh, well, Belly and Conrad will end up together, but maybe they'll do a Jeremiah spinoff for you so he can get his happy ending. No, that's condescending. Most of us think that slapping Jeremiah with some random love interest at the end is insulting and cheap, and it's just a way to make this look less messy than it is and, like, tie it up in a pretty bow. We don't want to hear it. Anyway, the point is, don't mention book 3 Jeremiah in my presence unless you want to get told. I will be outside that frat house ready. Since you open the can of worms, a promise is a promise. Nothing annoys me more than this, and yesterday I got this comment. Again, they trying to talk about how the Indian food in book 3 proves that Jeremiah is like a horrible boyfriend and inconsiderate and didn't know Belly. And then they got proven wrong and blocked me, as they do. But what this proves is not that Jeremiah is terrible, not that Belly and Jeremiah are incompatible, but that Belly needs to open her mouth and be serious. So in this book, Belly tells us how wonderful Jeremiah is to her and how he takes such good care of her when she's not feeling well, and he carries her across campus when her feet hurt, and he rubs her back and holds her hair back when she's sick, and he buys her Midol when she has cramps, and she can't be bothered with his allergies because, you know, he has allergies, not swine flu, even though she complained about having allergies in the first book, but I digress. Also, allergies are not a joke, Belly. When I catch you, he probably couldn't taste anything or breathe. Point is, Jeremiah gets Indian food because he says that's the only thing that makes him feel better when he has allergies. It's probably all that he can taste. But Belly Button doesn't like Indian food because it gives her an upset stomach, and apparently this is an indication that Jeremiah is inconsiderate and doesn't actually know her, except for the fact that Belly never said that, never told him, and proceeds to sit there and eat it, and he's supposed to know that, and she's allowed to resent him for that and then, like, blow up on him about things that she never voices. And also, I'm sorry, importantly, it's not about you 24/7. You can eat something else, Belly. Why don't you open your mouth and say something? And another thing about this book is that Belly somehow lost the ability to communicate with Jeremiah and instead just starts throwing his insecurities in his face, kind of like someone else, which again, this would be the only indication that Belly and Cobweb are meant to be because they're both like that in both trash bags in this book. I've said it before and I will say it again. Jeremiah is so not the villain in this book, and don't talk to me about communication skills. Oh, well, she's not perfect yet. Okay, this is basic. Open your mouth or don't be resentful. And also, maybe consider that it's not always about you. And don't get me started on the things she can come up with for Jeremiah that are annoying is like smoking redacted with his friends and eating pizza. Like, please, and seasonal allergies, goodbye. And if you're really going to try to use this to say that Jeremiah doesn't know Belly, when she tells us herself that he knows her very well and he does pay attention to her, she literally doesn't communicate this, and that is not his fault. So it's just not about her 24/7. But either way, if you're going to defend this and say like, oh, well, it's valid invalid, like he was being inconsiderate. I raise you this. What if Jeremiah had said or thought, oh my God, Belly, you have your period, not the plague. I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to get you Midol. Oh my gosh, you're being so dramatic. Would you not have dragged him for being an inconsiderate jerk? No, you would have. So be quiet. So I talked about this, how Taylor hates Conrad just like Laurel hates Susanna's husband, Adam, when I was discussing why it made perfect sense why Susanna was always Team Bonrad. And what I said was it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that this man's wife would be rooting for a struggle love, I can fix him ship like Bonrad, because look at her man. It was the same thing. Like, my friends hated him. They told me he was a bum, but I didn't listen because we were meant to be and I could fix him, beep bop boo, right? Two things I want to say about this. Number one, irate Bonrads don't want to hear this. They really don't. They'll shut you down every time. But as much as they love to talk about how Jeremiah is exactly like his father because of the non-cheating plot in book 3, and not that I'm saying Conrad is exactly like his father either, because that's not what I'm saying, but there are so many direct parallels between Conrad and Belly and Adam and Susanna, but they don't want to hear that. But the interesting thing about how Laurel hates Adam is, did you know that in the books they had a thing? Like, it's mentioned that Laurel and Adam had a thing. In book 1, Belly's talking about how she thinks Stephen wished Mr. Fisher was their dad, and she says he actually could have been. Susanna told me my mother had dated him first, but my mother handed him over to Susanna because she knew they'd be perfect together. And this is very sketch and very weird for so many reasons, because what do you mean you hate this man, but you handed him over to your best friend? And when did hating him start? Why? Because Laurel for sure also hates Adam in the books too. So it's very weird. You have to wonder what went on there. Whole thing, very weird. Like, show Laurel is a lot more lovable, in my opinion, a lot more likable, but there's something about book Laurel, like there's just a lot of stuff that we don't know about with Laurel, and a lot of it is weird. I have beef with book Laurel, I really do. So you know how a big talking point amongst Conrad stans is that books 1 and 2 aren't really valid because we don't get Conrad's POV until book 3, and Belly is unreliable. You can't really judge Conrad by his behavior in books 1 and 2 because we weren't getting his side of the story. And as somebody who has read these books, I would disagree that his behavior in books 1 and 2 and even in book 3 are dismissed or erased or excused or made up for or even clearly explained by his POV in book 3. I would also disagree that Conrad is some amazing love interest in book 3, but that's not the point. If you believe that to be true, that's fine. But I find it interesting that people are able to apply that sentiment and thought process to Conrad, but then refuse to understand the frustration that people have with book 3 in regards to Jeremiah. Because in book 2, there was Jeremiah POV and it was taken away in book 3 and we got Conrad's instead. Now, according to his stands, the book 3 Conrad POV was necessary to show us who Conrad actually is as a person and why his bad behavior doesn't count or whatever was excusable, right? Now, in book 2, when we got Jeremiah's POV, he didn't have a backload of awful behavior that he had to answer for. That wasn't the purpose of his POV, right? But Jeremiah's most condemnable behavior happens in book 3. Now, as you know, I do not consider Jeremiah to be awful or villainous in book 3. He's actually overall very sympathetic. But if you can rationalize that Conrad isn't actually bad, even though his actions were bad and we just weren't hearing his side of the story, why do you not consider that there's a whole POV we're not hearing in book 3? And that conveniently it's Jeremiah's, who's not the endgame love interest, and Conrad conveniently needs to look really good at this point. Because for me, I think that puts a whole lot of book 3 into perspective, that there is a whole side of the story that we're not hearing about at all. But it's just interesting that so many people can rationalize Conrad acting crazy for 2 books straight, and I would say 3, but then be like, well, we just didn't hear his side of the story, but then don't understand the frustration in regards to the writing of book 3. I do want to talk more about that at some point, because it's not that we think Jeremiah is without fault and we can't see him ever messing up and anything not perfect that he ever did was totally out of character. It's not that, but I ask you genuinely, regardless of how you feel about Conrad, did you really read books 1 and 2 and get out of them that Jeremiah was actually a real jerk and he was thoughtless and uncaring and disloyal and didn't really love Belly, and underneath it all he was just an immature jerk? Because to me, I saw enough of Jeremiah and who he was in the first 80% of the story, to the point where when we got to book 3, I was inclined to read between the lines and give him the benefit of the doubt. But the narrative doesn't really generously point that out. But I can see clearly what we're supposed to get out of it, because Belly does end up with Conrad. And I just think it's interesting that this concept of we're only hearing one side of the story can be applied to Conrad at the final hour. But book 3 Jeremiah is a disgrace, and that was showing his true colors, and it really doesn't matter what he had to say. I hate to say it, but you know what kind of math that is. Okay, why did Jeremiah ask Belly to marry him? Back at it again, discussing book 3 and the crimes of We'll Always Have Summer, specifically the engagement plot, because I have so much to say on the implications of not having Jeremiah's POV in book 3 and what that means for the story. But for now, there's a lot of talk about how many people feel this book was off tone to the rest of the series. And you hear the terms out of character and even character assassination thrown a lot. And I speak for myself, and I want to say many other people, when we say that it's not that we cannot ever imagine Jeremiah screwing up and any misstep he ever had would be out of character. And in fairness, I would even go as far as to say that regarding the Lacey Barone thing, okay, he gets into a fight with Belly. He's already feeling low. She's keeping this secret about Conrad that he did know about at that point. She very unnecessarily confirms his insecurities to him and throws them in his face, digs at them, destroys his self-esteem for no reason. They break up, and then he has a meaningless hookup with somebody who pursued him and wanted him and made him feel wanted and desired. Okay. And I will say that Belly straight up regressed in this book, and any character growth or development she seemed to be working towards in book 2 is just annihilated in this one, and it's pretty rough. But one thing I personally maintain is and remains out of character for them is the engagement plot. It just was, and everybody's saying, oh, I don't really see show Jeremiah and Belly doing that. I didn't see book Belly and Jeremiah doing that either. Like, it just wasn't the thing. But was it manipulative or sinister? No. And I can rationalize in the context of the story why he did it, even though I think it's ridiculous. Might I add that Belly could have said no, but she was all for it and even adamant about it. And every time he asked, do you still want to do this? Do you want to postpone this? Do you want to slow down? Belly insisted. Nor do I believe it's because Jeremiah can't apologize or was trying to cover it up, because that one just doesn't make sense and is not at all what happened. He was extremely remorseful. He very much does apologize several times, crying, shaking the whole thing, full responsibility for the hurt that he has caused. And I will also say that his acceptance of the blame for hurting Belly and the way he just takes it and lets her, rage at him and slap him and whatever, and his remorse contributes to the way that people ring him out for it more than he deserves, because remember, he did not cheat on her, and Belly certainly was not forthright or honest about her carryings on while they were actually in a relationship. But regardless, it hurt her, obviously, and he feels awful about it. He's not covering it up or hiding it once she finds out about it and not unable to apologize. But I believe the reason for the engagement is two things mainly. Part of it, of course, is because he doesn't want to lose her. Of course he's desperate not to lose her. I believe him when he says, I don't ever want to be without you ever. You're the only girl for me. I've always known it in this whole world. I will never love another girl the way I love you. I believe it, regardless of how you feel about Jeremiah. He is so in love with her and obviously wants to stay with her. But I also think it's very clearly to prove himself mature and serious for her, and to prove that he can be what she allegedly wants, because what we have happening again and again throughout book 3 is Belly refusing to communicate with Jeremiah. She just simply stopped doing that and insulting him instead when she gets upset, kind of like somebody else in the series, and him picking up on it and desperately trying to compensate for whatever it is she wants despite her refusal to communicate it. Like, this was very clear to me when they had that fight before spring break. Belly was going off on him about, oh, your fraternity is so stupid, it's just a bunch of lazy, stupid frat guys, immature, stupid, inferiority complex. I think obviously here, when he's saying, I know that I hurt us, I'm gonna have to work really hard to get you to trust me again, I'll do whatever it takes, I'll cook, I'll do the laundry, we'll do this and that, is him saying, I won't be that. I won't be stupid and lazy and immature. I can be serious and mature for you. And to be fair to him, he does try his damnedest throughout this book. She was not giving. Now, is this a good or right or effective way to convey this when you're 18, 19 years old? No. But I suppose a young, misguided way of doing doing it might translate this way, even though, again, I do not think it's super plausible for them. Was it manipulative or sinister? No. It was dumb is what it was. Sad, yes. But don't come to me talking about, oh, well, he manipulated an 18-year-old girl into marrying him to cover up the fact that he cheated, because that is just factually not what happened at all. And also, yeah, Belly was 18 and Jeremiah was all of 19. Thank you. You want to talk about somebody who manipulated a teenager into marriage? We could talk about this, all right? Power dynamic, bartering, manipulation, whole thing. A reminder that Jeremiah is the one who called the wedding off. So I hope we don't see this play out in the show, but then again, I didn't see it coming in the book either. So this comment says, question, I've read so many different comments. Some people are saying he slept with the other girl while they were on a break. He, meaning Jeremiah, and the rest of the comments said, and others are saying he cheated. Well, allow me to show you the text and you will find that it was actually neither of those things. They were not on a break. They explicitly broke up, and therefore he did not cheat on her at all. I'm going to show you once again all the receipts, because it's not just one receipt. It's not just like a technicality. No. It's receipt after receipt after receipt. But what happens is a lot of these anti-Jeremiahs and irate Bonrads, they've actually never read the books, and they admit that, right? I actually have seen some of them admit that. Or maybe they read it 10, 15 years ago and haven't picked it up since, because I've told you before, and I will tell you again, you cannot trust anything a Bonrad tells you about those books on here, because it's just lies, minutia, propaganda, everything. Like, oh, like they were just taking a temporary break and they just asked for space. Nope, absolute lies. And they always want to put up this corny picture and be like, oh, Jeremiah in season 3, and they think they're like so funny with this dried up joke, and then somebody's like, well, like he didn't even cheat, and then they're like, no, he did, this happened, beep bop boo, and then they'll literally admit that they didn't read the book and they got their information recycled from some other Bonrad who didn't know what they were talking about. And the thing is, most of them have me and all the girlies who put up the receipts blocked, so they're never confronted with the actual correct information because they don't want to see it. But I'll show it to you because you want to see it. So here we have, in We'll Always Have Summer, Belly's narration, and she says, when we broke up in April, it really did come out of nowhere. And then she goes on to detail the breakup. I've dissected the implications of this breakup and why I think it happened and how sad I think it is, but just so we're clear, there's no gray area. This is the dialogue. Jeremiah says, if you think I'm so stupid and selfish and wasteful, why are you even with me? Belly doesn't say anything, and he says, F it, I won't waste your time anymore. Let's end it now. No temporary break discussion, none of that. Oh, space, beep up, or whatever. They literally made it up. They lie. It's BS. They don't want to give him credit for anything. Belly Button says fine and leaves. That's it. That is a full breakup. And then she reiterates it and says, I cried the whole way home. I couldn't believe we had broken up. They don't talk that whole week. Mind you, Belly realizes she is the one who should reach out to Jeremiah, not him chasing after her. And then when he comes back, she does, but importantly, she initiates them getting back together, not Jeremiah. And then, of course, we have the classic Jeremiah cheated on me when we were broken up, my favorite. I'm going to take this opportunity to say that Belly Button's little, but we weren't really broken up. It wasn't really me. Like, I always thought that we were going to get back together. That doesn't mean that they weren't broken up. Like, yes, I understand, like, her feelings, but she herself acknowledges that they were fully broken up. And if you needed more than that, interestingly, by the end of this book here, and it's very sad, it does begin to dawn on Belly Button how unfair she has been to Jeremiah. And they have this conversation where he brings up how she has been lying to him, and then he says, you know, I felt like garbage about what happened with Lacey, and he accepted everything from her. He just sat there and took it and let himself get slapped and everything, and I'm so sorry, and what I did was unforgivable, and I'm so sorry for hurting you, Bells, right? Because he felt so terrible that what he had done hurt her. But he says, finally, you and I weren't even together when that happened, and I felt terrible. And she's got nothing to say because she knows it's the truth, and now she has nothing to say, and now she's devastated. Now she's sad, and she picks Jeremiah, and he can't. Nope, he walks away. I hope that clears it up. That is the truth. That is the text. Do not listen to what any anti-Jeremiah tells you on here, because I promise you they don't have any receipts. Comment says, people have a delusion that when you break up, you need to go through a mourning period before you get with someone else. Otherwise, it's cheating. This is true, and I'm going to use this because there is always unfailingly somebody haunting the comments from a 5-month-old video every day where I'm talking about Jeremiah, like, wait till season 3, wait till book 3, Lacey Barone, as if I'm like afraid of Lacey Barone. I'm going to use this to express something else that is true that might shock people, that might be an unpopular opinion. I don't care about Lacey Barone. I really don't. I don't care that he did that. It's not that I don't care about it. I think the whole situation is like sad, but I don't care that Jeremiah did that, in the sense that, like, I don't think he's disgusting for that. And and he didn't cheat, and he like logistically didn't do anything wrong. The fact that this is like Jeremiah's big screw up after like Conrad acts crazy throughout all 3 books, and said screw up, said downfall that everyone's preying on is him hooking up with somebody, like having a rebound while he was literally single. And then when you show the receipts that clearly demonstrate that they were fully broken up, not on a break, nothing, then they switch the goalpost and say, well, it was a betrayal and he should have told her when they came back. First of all, I've said a million times that I do understand why it hurt Belly, because feelings are feelings, but facts are facts. And a betrayal of what exactly? The relationship that they didn't have at that point? And then they move it again to one of 2 places. My favorite, number 1, is, well, if he really loved her, he wouldn't have moved on so quickly. Which, like, first of all, we don't actually know what happened with Lacey because we don't get Jeremiah's POV. But what do you mean he moved on? People act like he, like, got into a relationship. He had a one-night stand. And that's, like, a very common response when somebody is distraught or heartbroken, right? Like, right after a breakup. Like, you see that all the time. And I also have to say, like, people who cling to this argument give these weird kind of, like, I want to say, like, purity culture vibes. Because when I hear, like, well, he wouldn't have done that if he really loved her, I have to think, like, do you know how people work? Like, are you being serious right now? Because that, you know, that's not how that works. Hooking up with somebody else when you're broken up does not mean that you don't love your ex. Like, what are you talking about? And then also when people will say that it's worse because Belly hadn't had sex with Jeremiah yet, like, that also gives me weird vibes. Not because I don't understand why that makes it more hurtful from Belly's perspective, why that makes her feel more strongly about it. I get it, but that doesn't change anything as far as Jeremiah. Like, they present it as if it makes it like more nefarious on Jeremiah's part, when that had nothing to do with Belly. Like, Jeremiah is not the keeper of Belly's virginity. Like, what are you talking about? They were broken up. And speaking of, I think it's fair enough to assume that maybe Jeremiah was thinking, if she really loved me, she wouldn't have said all this before they broke up. And that's what I wanted to say. Like, the more I read this fight, the less I can defend Belly for anything, because she admits that she picked a fight with him because she was feeling resentful about him going to Cabo without her, but didn't want to go with him and didn't like it when he said, you can come with us. And then all this, like, never voicing what her actual concerns are, and all this, like, after she, like, belittled and degraded him and everything about him and his friends and everything he does is stupid. Don't put your inferiority complex on me. And mind you, this whole time, Jeremiah knows that she has lied to him about seeing Conrad. And that makes me think too, like, no wonder he got so upset when she, like, accused him of, like, well, have fun with the Zetas, accusing him of, like, well, there's gonna be girls there, when he's never done anything. And the problem is, like, Belly never actually voiced her concerns here, like, her actual concerns. Like, she makes it about his dad and whatever. And the most that I can give Belly in the beginning of the fight is that she felt, like, left out because they had maybe talked about going to cousins over spring break, and he said that he was gonna visit his dad. And this trip obviously just came up, like, it was a deal, and he did invite her, and she had been, like, feeling left out because Jeremiah has a lot of friends and she felt like they spent more time with his friends. And that's valid, except she never said that to him. I'm confused as to why I'm supposed to think he is the bad guy. Like, no, he's not perfect. Like, he does, like, silly, stupid college boy things, but, like, he tried so hard. Damn. Like, if she had just said that to him, we have no reason to believe that he would be anything other than accommodating to her like he always is, but she never did. She came for his whole existence, and I'm supposed to be mad that they broke up and he went and hooked up with somebody else? Well, sorry, I'm not. And then the whole, like, well, he should have told her. Okay, like, let's be honest. Let's be so honest. He doesn't owe her what happened when they broke up. Like, I get why he didn't tell her. I really do. I also get why Belly was upset. But does he owe her that? Like, for being so serious? Like, that's his big crime? And mind you, Jeremiah didn't come back from Cabo like, oh, I have to get back with Belly. Belly initiated them getting back together. She realized, like, I have to go to him and apologize, and then they got back together. So, like, can't wait for Lacey Barone. She's gonna be my favorite character. Like, wait until Lacey Barone, wait until Cabo. Like, I don't care. Like, what are you trying to prove here? Like, this proved nothing. And like I've said, I would hope that they, like, rework that plot line if they still include it in the show for reasons that are different that I've already discussed. But, like, I'm saying it now, I don't care about Lacey Barone, and that's my truth. Like, I genuinely do not care. I mean, I do, because it makes me sad. And then the really sad thing is that this is still my OTP. after all this. And I still do love Belly and Jeremiah, and I really, like, it really does make me sad. Like, this whole book makes me sad, and they did really love each other. Like, it's true. They were in love. It's true. And even with all this, I cannot in good faith say that she wasn't in love with him and that she didn't really love him, because she did. But this is just such a mess. I have been very anxious for Bridgerton season 3 since those first stills were released, and they were just looking amazing, and Penn was looking like a mermaid, and I was so excited. And then I was starting to think it was never going to happen because they just kept pushing it back and pushing it back. This absolutely awakened something in me. I'm excited in general just because I love Bridgerton. It's always a good watch, and by the end I'm always like, okay, fine. Like, I have a love-hate relationship with pretty much everyone in the show, but by the end I'm like, okay, but I am perhaps most excited to see her drag this man to hell. I want her to embarrass him. Like, I want her to drag him so bad. And you know I am a sucker for a friends to lovers ship, and by the end, am I gonna be like, aw, okay, like, am I gonna be happy that they're together? Yeah, I can already see it coming. I know that I will be. But just on principle, I was kind of shocked at that whole, like, I would never dream of courting Penelope Featherington, because I was like, that was, like, so harsh, and I was like, oh my god. But it's gonna be so fun to see her drag him to hell. In conclusion, I'm excited. I was very excited by the synopsis and the premise, and I love that everybody is saying that it's gonna have rom-com vibes. Like, okay, like, at the end of the day, like, I will drag everybody in Bridgerton because I just, like, I can't, but then at the end, I'm like, oh, okay, fine, and then, you know, because that's me. I feel like this might end up being my favorite Bridgerton installment. I'm still, like, not decided on which book is my favorite. Like, Bridgerton is just always a fun time, but when season 1 came out, I actually don't care about Daphne and Simon at all. Like, let me go on record saying that I do not care about them. I don't care about them not being in the show. I don't care. But I like season 1 for different reasons. And then when season 2 came out, I was like, no, season 2 is my favorite. And then when Queen Charlotte came out, I was like, no, this is my favorite. So yeah, this will definitely be my favorite when this comes out. And I'm also very excited to see my man. And if you didn't know, in Bridgerton, this is my man always. And I'm thinking he will probably be season 4. So I'm thinking we'll probably see a lot of him and maybe some foreshadowing, which I'm very excited about because, like, I'm kind of confused and curious and excited, but, like, wary about what they're actually going to do with him. And I know that a lot of people were upset that they, like, skipped over Benedict because technically his book is next. But even as, like, a proper Benedict girly, I wasn't mad that they went with Pollen for season 3. I do like Pollen, but, like, I wasn't mad about it because, like, I do think they're gonna do a good job with this one. Like, it looks to me like it's gonna be well done. Like, I think we're gonna have a good time. I'm really excited. Like, I wish that they didn't, like, push it back, like, so many times, but, like, we're gonna have a good time. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Do you perchance remember in book 3, We'll Always Have Summer, the one that you all love to talk about, when this man showed up to Belly unannounced, empty-handed on Valentine's Day while they were in a situationship, and he didn't do anything. He literally just pointed to the sky and told her to look up, and she romanticized that and said, so no, he didn't give me flowers or candy. He gave me the moon and the stars, infinity. And not only did Belly romanticize it, but you all romanticized it to the point where that's the quote that they put on all the merch, as if it's like some really romantic thing and not like a sad girl like romanticizing her rich situationship showing up empty-handed on Valentine's Day. That remains a problem, the way that you all romanticize that, and I'm going to tell you why that is a problem. So here's the thing. That was supposed to be like one of Conrad's best moments. It's supposed to be like very romantic and like Conrad at his best, right? And the really crazy thing is that that flashback follows the sand crab flashback with Jeremiah in book 3, and like it's very interesting to like compare the two because it just like really tells you everything you need to know about the two of them, in my opinion. Because need I remind you that at this point, Belly and Conrad were not in a relationship because we never actually see them in a relationship in the books. Conrad put her in a situationship and it was entirely on his terms. And on Valentine's Day, he didn't acknowledge her. He didn't say like, oh, let's do something. He showed up unannounced as he usually does. And he showed up empty-handed other than a thermos full of lukewarm cocoa and a box of Twinkies. So something that he could have purchased at the Wawa on his way there, which, you know, he couldn't be bothered to stop when he was driving however many hours with that poor girl to take her to the beach house, the cold beach house with no food in it, and he starved her and he couldn't even stop at the Wawa then, but whatever. Okay, so he stopped and he got a box of Twinkies. Mind you, he was driving a Range Rover. And see, like, this would be one thing if Conrad, like, ever put forth effort and or wasn't a rich kid with a trust fund who allegedly had had a Tiffany necklace in his possession at this point, but still couldn't give it to Belly on Valentine's Day. Like, he gave her nothing, no flowers, no candy, no present, nothing, just Twinkies and lukewarm cocoa unannounced. And Belly is so excited and enthralled that he has acknowledged her presence on this day that she romanticizes that and says, he didn't give me flowers or candy, but he gave me the moon and the stars, infinity. What he did is show up unannounced, take you to your front lawn, and told you to look up in the cold. That's what he did. And I would say king of the bare minimum, but I can't even say that because he only does the bare minimum occasionally. Don't be like this, okay? Do not be like this. I will never forget the way you romanticize this. No, he did not give you the moon and the stars. He showed up empty-handed. Your rich situationship showed up empty-handed on Valentine's Day. Anyway, in other news, I know they're having a great day with flowers, candy, words of affirmation, affection, quality time, all of that. I'm sure that's what they're doing, you know, effort and acknowledgement that they want to be with each other. In the future with little Daisy, I just know that it would be so cute, and he would make breakfast just like my girl, what would Eli Pope do said, and it's so cute. Like, I know that they're having a great time. So I have a bit of a reputation for like hating Conrad, and sometimes that is true, but it's not always true. There are a couple things that I really need to clarify that it's very important that you know, and I know that a lot of Bonrads like have me blocked, and that's great. Like, I'm flattered. Book Conrad can kind of go scratch entirely. That's not to say that I don't sympathize with him and I can't feel for him, because I do. And another thing you guys have to stop saying is that people who don't like Conrad, or people who think Conrad is a poor love interest for Belly just in general, which he is, he treats her poorly. People who are not with this, I can fix him, I thought you knew, go look in the mirror some more, emotional yo-yo BS, like, don't understand grief, have never lost a loved one, or don't understand mental health struggles, like, please back up. You sound incredibly ignorant, you are wrong, and I will absolutely tell you about yourself for saying that, because you could not be more wrong or vile for that. But the truth is, Conrad's not my favorite character or anything, but I don't hate him all the time. I just think he absolutely blows as a love interest, and I'll be happy to tell you about it. I think he's a terrible love interest for Belly, but there are actually some Conrad scenes that I really like. And by that, I mostly mean his scenes with Steven. I'm not even kidding. I'm unironically Team Stonrad. Like, he has a nice moment with Jer here and there. Never with Belly, pretty much never with anybody else, but with Steven, yeah. Literally, I'm not even kidding. I'm so Team Stonrad. Like, my favorite Conrad scene is probably the one in season 1 where he's like, okay, like when Steven asked me to go to the party, like, I genuinely think he's so cute in that scene. And I love the you're still the coolest scene on the beach. Like, that scene is actually so romantic, and I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm not clowning. And I like that I will try and be more zen. And like, yes, they both annoy me so bad. Together, I think they're cute. Like, I think they have something. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I really do. I think the only person who can get through to Conrad is not Belly. We have actually never seen that. It's Steven. I also maintain that Steven is the only person that Conrad, like, actually respects, and that could be part of it. But, like, why does Steven annoy me? Why doesn't Steven annoy me? Like, I have talked so much trash about Steven, and I meant every word of it. When I say I'm Team Stonrad, I am meaning, like, I think Steven and Conrad have some really sweet scenes together, and, like, do some of their scenes make me feel something? Yes, absolutely. Do I think they kind of deserve each other? Yes, absolutely. Does that mean I actually enjoy or like Steven as a character? No, like, Steven actually, like, he's not, I wouldn't say I dislike him more than Conrad, but like, he's right up there. I never liked Steven actually in the books. I really couldn't stand Steven, and he wasn't even that relevant at all. What Steven has going for him in the show is his actor, but him as a character, like as written, he's still terrible in the show, and I stand by that. And first of all, I'm gonna say, if he didn't have, number one, a cute and charismatic and charming actor, and number two, if he wasn't up Conrad's, you know what, everyone would hate Steven, because his actions are actually crazy. Even just beginning in season 1, I didn't really like him because I don't like his attitude. I don't like his like elitist, like Ivy League thing. I don't like how he's like insulting to his sister, and like, in a way, I get like where some of that comes from, and I can be like a little bit forgiving. But number one, I did not like his carryings on with Shayla. I did not think he treated her correctly. Obviously, he had some nerve humiliating 2 girls at one time, kind of like somebody else we know, the person who he loves and idolizes the most, treating girls like they're disposable. Taylor will always deserve so much better than this man, and I was not here for Taylor. I was never here for Bonrad 2.0. I love how he really modeled himself after Conrad by calling a girl a mistake and then having the audacity to try to get back with her after that. Steven, mind you, only after he gets dumped by Shayla, and he was ashamed of Taylor. Didn't think she was good enough, mind you, by his own admission, hooks up with her because he was feeling insecure and like knew that she would go for it because she had this huge crush on him, and I hate that. I really hate that. What really gets me is this. So we got cheater, homewrecker, because Taylor was in a relationship, and also add fake friend to the list, and this I really can't. So Steven and Jer were like so close in season 1, and Jer was such such a good friend to him. And then come season 2, he's like rooting against him and talking absolute trash behind his back in favor of his true love Conrad. Absolutely not. And see, this scene, like, where he gets mad at Jer because he's like hooking up with Belly and he's like, you could have told me, whatever. Okay, so like that scene did annoy me a little bit because it seemed like he was accusing Jeremiah of having nefarious intentions with Belly. But that particular moment, like, I could excuse it at the time because number one, it really seemed like Steven was also jealous and I kind of felt bad. I was like, aw. And I was like, okay, whatever, like, he's being protective this one time and he's also obviously very jelly, so whatever, Steven, like, I'll forgive you this time. But then turns around after he witnesses with his own 2 eyes, he witnesses Cobweb mistreat Belly and then is like rooting for them to get back together. And not only that, he challenges Belly's speech. Absolutely done. I will never get over that. Number one, because me and all the girls, we have been asking you since August to provide us with one singular solitary example of when Conrad challenged Belly in a positive way or helped her to grow in a positive way, because that actually never happened. But also, number one, the way he prefaced that with Jer's easier, whatever that means, that rubbed me the wrong way. What do you mean by that? I don't like that. And he challenges her as if he has any idea about that or what goes on, like he has no idea. And then also his mom was dying. Like, what a nasty way to dismiss Jeremiah with the same mom. And then I really didn't like the whole thing about like, oh, like she deserves somebody who like sees all the deep and complex things about her. And Taylor's like, you think that's Conrad? Like, rightfully so. And he's like, I know it's not Jeremiah. Like, how dare you? And that's why Stephen Conklin, like, absolutely never, like, I can't stand him. That being said, like, do I get butterflies a little bit during that scene between the two of them on the beach where he's like, no, you're still the coolest. Like, yes, I do. But just so we all, like, we're clear, like, I can't stand Steve. This is the gag with them. This is the ultimate gag. You said you just finished the first book and you don't understand how Conrad is so popular. But whose stans are always bringing up the books? If I was a Conrad stan, I would never mention those books. I would never mention the one-page endgame because book Conrad, when I say he brings nothing to the table, he is off. He was bad for 2009. And there's 2 things I want to say about that. I have been waiting for so long with bated breath for the day when we can retire this trope where the guy who treats the main character poorly is the one and like she just doesn't have a choice and she can't escape fate. She has to end up with the bum who dogged her 100 times because, you know, he's misunderstood and they were just meant to be and the stars were pointing their way and she can't possibly be with the guy who treats her nicely because infinity and fate and whatever. Like, I've been waiting for when we can retire that trope so hard. Like, the girl loves the boy more tropes, please. Unfortunately, I don't think the day has come because we're gonna have to sit through her getting back with this man most likely in 2025. You know, I was done with it in 2009, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. People like Belly and Conrad for the same reason that people love to ship Carrie and Mr. Big and wanted them to be together in the end. It's the romanticization of the struggle of emotionally unavailable man actually liking you back in the end. And maybe, you know, he liked you the whole time. And in the end, if you put in enough effort and you stay obsessed with him, he'll come around and you'll get your Conrad to commit or your Mr. Big to commit after 10, 20 years. And, you know, I don't think I have to get into how unappealing that is and how, like, not the moment it is, but it definitely is, like, wish fulfillment for that kind of thing. And that's how we get these ships. And I really wish that we could retire it. And before anybody says it and makes a fool out of themselves, please do not tell me that I don't understand grief, I don't understand mental health struggles. You just sound like such an ignorant fool. I do, and I can empathize with Conrad. That doesn't mean I think that he's a decent love interest. He is an absolute flop clown joke of a love interest, an F-boy by definition who sent a literal you up text. And the way his stans want to bring up the books, like, if you take all those sweet things that you like about Conrad, and I don't think he's that great in the show either, like, I think he's a terrible love interest in the show too, take those like cutesy little flashbacks out, like dial up every bad thing that he does to like 20, and then like remove the fact that Belly and Conrad actually had a relationship, and you have book Conrad. He never moved me for 1 minute in those books. Like, you all know I used to love Edward Cullen. Conrad never, because when I say he brings nothing to the table, and he is so awful, he is so awful. He doesn't even, like, okay, between you and me, I like to criticize things, you know, I like to discuss things. When I'm reading a book from like 2009, for my own reading purposes, I don't hold the characters and like the male love interest to the same standard I would as one written today, right? Conrad doesn't even hold up like to the 2009 standards. He's bad for those standards. I say that as somebody who genuinely likes those books. Like, I love the Some Right Turn Pretty series. Like, it's very special to me. And I love Miss Jenny Han. I think she is great. Like, I think her work is great. Obviously it is. I love her writing style. I still think Conrad is a trash love interest, and I'm allowed to say that. Obviously, I love her movies and TV shows. I love pretty much all her books. Me and Will Always Have Summer have beef, but like Conrad is a flap of a love interest. He's so bad. And the way his stands always bring up the books. Like, you don't want to bring up the books. Like, the things I can tell you about Book Conrad, the reason that they want to bring up the books is because like in the last page of the last book, he got the end game. And also like they think that's what they have on Jeremiah, and it's not. Like, it truly is not. Like, I don't even have to bring up like him like grabbing and shaking her and like salute shaming her. Like, how about like when Belly and Jeremiah were like crying in each other's arms and they slept in the same bed like for comfort, and then Conrad stumbles in drunk the next morning after grabbing and shaking Belly, which caused the fight that they have at the end, and he was like, aren't you supposed to be nice to me the way you were for Jer last night? And this is their prince, and they're like, read the books. If you read the book, you'd be Team Conrad. No, we wouldn't. No, we wouldn't. How people who love Bonrad will talk about how Belly and Conrad have like true and deep lasting love, and Jeremiah and Belly are like friends who have a lustful physical connection, but it's not like true love. I have a question. What is your definition of love? Because number one, it's something that I see a lot, and I like hate this trope where it's like love is just something that is, and it doesn't matter like how he treats you, or like if you're not friends, like it's just like he's the one, and that's true and deep love. Like, as if love is not something that like should be built from friendship, as if like that isn't a good thing, as if love shouldn't make you feel safe. Like, the same people will say like Belly only chose Jeremiah because like she feels safe with him and it's stability. You think it's a good thing that she doesn't feel safe and stable with Condiment? Like, every time I hear that I cringe. Like, it's just because she chose like safe love instead of like true and real love. Like, what is your definition of true and real love? Like, you don't, like, what? I have plenty of words on why Conrad makes her feel everything, and none of them are good. It has a lot to do with like breadcrumbing and emotional whiplash, but you all don't want to hear that. I just think it's funny that number one, the narrative, the criticism jumps from platonic besties to it's just lust when Belly says it's really hot, or they have a romantic scene, when it's like, what do you think like love is? What do you think a relationship is? It's almost as if they have this emotional connection where they love each other as people, and they also have romantic feelings for each other, and it's really hot. Like, and also I don't like it when people say like, yeah, with Jeremiah it's supposed to show that it's just like hot, but with Conrad it's like true and deep love. It's almost as if they have an emotional connection and then they also have a physical one. Isn't that what it should be? Like, shouldn't it make you feel safe? Like, I hate that whole narrative, and I think you all sound so weird when you're like, yeah, see, the way that like Conrad kisses Belly, you can tell that it's like true and deep love, and with Belly and Jeremiah it's just love. So like, bland equals true love. Like, I don't even know what you're trying to say. Like, more chaste maybe equals true love. That makes no sense. Again, you're kind of giving purity culture. I don't like it. Like, what does true love have to be? Like, it has to be that the stars point their way and she has to wear a sweatshirt and they have to eat the ice cream at the same time. Like, it's got to be about these meaningless symbols and nothing in his actual actions. Like, you guys don't make sense. I don't like it. You're weird. Because I agree that Belly feels safe with Jeremiah in the sense that like she is sure of his love. She's sure of his affection. She doesn't feel like she has to fight for it. She doesn't feel like it's precarious, and that is a good thing. That is romantic. You not seeing that is your problem, not me. And I think what a lot of people are trying to say when they criticize this relationship or Belly's choice with the descriptor of safe is safe as to mean not exciting. And I would say that really doesn't apply, considering like she literally described being with Jeremiah as like real and scary, and we had this whole Tower of Terror scene that was like an obvious metaphor, and then we get like really, really hot, a charge growing between us. Like, it's just not, like, it doesn't fit. And you can see in some of my comment sections, like when I do get into it with a Bonrad, a lot of times when their point is disproven because they're trying to say that he's a cheater or bebop or whatever, then they'll just be like, well, it's just like obvious that Jeremiah and Belly, like, it's not like true love. They're just like friends with lust. And it's like, what is true and deep love to you? Because it's kind of concerning. Like, when I looked at him, I saw past, present, and future. That's not like, you wouldn't say like that was a true and deep love that she felt. Okay, you know what? Go back to Catching Burgers.
So the first trailer for Joker 2 dropped today at CinemaCon just a couple hours ago. This is it. And as a certified Todd Phillips Joker hater and as a staunch lover of the character Harley Quinn, I do have a lot of thoughts. I'm not gonna lie, this trailer is like pulling my brain in so many different directions, because like in my gut, do I think this movie is going to be good? Like, no, I don't. But this trailer kind of like slaps. Like, the imagery is very cool. There's a lot of really beautiful shots. I do think that the idea of like Arthur having this fantasy world that he phases in and out of is like a very cool visual concept that seems to be like very interestingly explored here. And as someone who loves Harley Quinn, like, I do not at all mind like rewriting the origin story, like completely reimagining the origin story between the two, because I've never been like a super fan of like, you know, the fact that he doesn't have any real romantic feelings for her and he's super abusive. I much prefer like, you know, queer Harley once we get down the line, but I also don't mind a version of this character that like actually has like a romantic origin. That being said, considering the way that Joker handles its female characters, I don't have a ton of confidence that Harley is going to be like a fully realized autonomous female character. I'm kind of terrified that there's going to be some late plot twist where she's just a figment of his imagination and she's some kind of like imaginary manic pixie girlfriend. Because obviously we can tell from this trailer that she's not playing his psychiatrist, she's not playing his doctor. She appears to be another like inmate, another patient at Arkham, and like also serving cunt, which is great. And admittedly, like, the first Joker gets compared to King of Comedy a lot, and one of my favorite characters from King of Comedy is Sandra Bernhardt's character, Marcia, which, like, Harley is definitely giving me those kinds of vibes in this trailer, which I like. I just don't know. I mean, I think there's about a 30% chance that this movie actually ends up being, like, totally sick, like very, very cool, very awesome. But I genuinely don't know what to think. I don't think there's any shot that this movie is subtle in its messaging or themes. I think it's going to come down to, is it fun? And I'm hoping yes. I mean, right off the bat, I love that Todd Phillips was like, let's create a concept and a cast that would seemingly completely alienate the original audience for the first movie. That's super rock and roll. So, I mean, honestly, I'm invested. I'm invested. Why don't I talk about Marvel or the MCU anymore? Great question. I do talk about them. Here's the thing. I'm sorry if it's like loud outside my window. They're doing yard work. TikTok has changed many times since I started making content, and I've changed many times as well. Like, not like taking a stand against the MCU, although I definitely feel like my tastes have changed considerably since I first started making content. Like, this is my full-time job, and there is a need to talk about things that are trending. But the other thing is, like, I am just a person who has a mental bandwidth that sometimes doesn't extend to the things that people want from me. And I've, like a lot of people, I like feel like I've been experiencing superhero fatigue. It's a genre that I genuinely do really like. And I'm hoping that by like not really engaging in it right now, that by the time something big comes along again, I'll be excited for it. I've literally never done this like eyeshadow first technique that's become pretty standard, and obviously this is like a fluorescent green, so I'm really hoping that we're gonna work through the Beetlejuice together. But the other thing is just that like I'm never gonna like tell you that being an influencer is like harder than any other job. I've worked a lot of jobs and this is hands down one of the best. But like having your like career success and your like inherent self-worth tied to the way your content performs can be like really stressful. And so if I like don't feel like I'm capable of making content about something, I just don't put myself through that anymore, because it's just not like a fun thing to feel like a failure all the time. Gosh, this is really giving like Brazil, like soccer. That's not really what I was going for. The thing with like MCU content is I feel like back in the day, like TikTok used to encourage people to put several videos a day, to have like more in-depth, like analytical conversations, like back and forths. But now with the way TikTok works and like encouraging just kind of like one video a day is really the way it is. Like, I don't really feel like I have the ability or like am set up for success to be posting a ton of like episode breakdowns or like character breakdowns for like I'm not like an MCU page. I'm like a film and media and pop culture page in general. And my interest in the MCU is like a subsection of my interest in like film in general. I feel like we're getting more into like a Peacock area, which is fine. Not really what I was going for, but as long as it doesn't end up looking like my eyes are bruised. Here's the thing. When I first started TikTok, like I would talk about books, I would talk about comics, I talked about anything, because this wasn't like a job, and I wasn't really thinking about what I was posting. I was just posting about what I was thinking, if that makes sense. And now, like, in part because I do this professionally, in part because I've just been doing this for a long time, and like I've realized what works for me and what I'm capable of, like I just have to be more intentional with my content. I talk about horror. My most recent podcast episode is about 2 horror movies. I absolutely love horror. And I know that like a lot of my followers don't like horror at all. A lot of movie watchers, horror is just a genre that they just fundamentally don't enjoy. And most big like horror pages on TikTok are like exclusively for horror. Like a lot of people go, they want that separate from their other movie content, but that's just one of the things I like. So this is a page where I'm going to talk about indie prestige films that I love, and horror movies and superhero movies sometimes. There are some constants, like I'm always going to talk about like the representation of women and marginalized groups, but also if you ever want me to talk about something specifically, like you could always just ask. You don't have to, you know, make assumptions or be upset. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to be able to do things. And I do, you know, sometimes get bogged down by real life annoying shit like depression. I'm bummed about it too. And listen, if I'm being totally real with you, the experience of being a woman in any of these spaces is exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. So, you know, I pick my battles these days. Anyways, I also just don't feel like I have the bandwidth to watch all of the Marvel content that I would need to. I still haven't really felt like I've had time to catch up on Loki season 2. I haven't gotten around to X-Men 97, which is crazy for me because the original X-Men was one of my favorite things ever. It's a lot of hours of content that I'm not like mentally prepared to take on right now. That being said, I'm very excited, and I will talk about this stuff eventually again when I get around to it. I was trying to go for like a Chappell Roan's older witchier sister. How'd I do? Okay, I keep seeing this take. A lot of people seem to be under the impression that this movie Civil War is like irresponsibly apolitical or badly timed. And like there seems to be this widespread idea that this movie, the message of this movie is that it like refuses to take a stance and seems to insinuate that like both sides are equally bad and just like violence is never the answer. And as someone who's seen this movie twice, that's absolutely not the case. Like this movie is very clear in its politics. It makes it clear in the first 5 minutes of this film what the cause of this conflict is. And even though they don't give you a play-by-play of like how exactly it like unfolded over the year or so, whatever leading up to it, it's very clear. Like there are characters in this film that are extremely thinly veiled references to real life political figures. And it's fascism. It's authoritarianism. It's not, they literally spell it out multiple times. Like, there's just never any point in this film where it's even remotely insinuating that, like, both sides are equally bad. Like, one side and only one side in this film is illustrated as being openly and violently xenophobic and racist. One side and only one side is shown to be, like, aggressive and hostile towards journalists and the very, like, concept of freedom of speech. Like, it's not at all unclear who's being alluded to in this film. Like it's not at all subtle. And I think some of this idea is coming from the interviews that Alex Garland himself has given, because I do think that like the words that he's choosing, the way that he's choosing to articulate himself is, I don't think, super clear. And honestly, it kind of seems intentional. He does, like, even with his comments about, like, not, like, having fallen out of love with filmmaking, I don't think he enjoys having to explain himself. And so that's, you know, that's on him kind of to an extent. But I also think that there's this, like, weird, people are conflating the idea of, like, being anti-war to being, like, centrist and not wanting to take a side. And I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think it's totally okay to understand that war is one of the most horrifying, dehumanizing, brutal atrocities that humanity has ever conceived of, that people who live through it never recover from. And also, like, understanding that sometimes violence is necessary. Like this film doesn't even, like, mildly suggest that the, like, resistance, the secessionists, like, are in the wrong or shouldn't have done what they did. If anything, I think one of the major themes of this film is that inaction eventually becomes violence. When you stand so long, when you look in the face of atrocities being done and you do nothing, there comes a point when that in itself is an act of violence. I think that this film has very clear political leanings and messaging, and I genuinely think that, like, the majority of this conversation is stemming from the fact that most people haven't actually seen this film yet. Like, I don't think it's what people are expecting at all, and I think once people actually see it, like, they'll understand what I'm talking about here. People are free to obviously have different interpretations, but this is an example of like people being critical of a film because it's something that it's not. And in this case, they don't even understand what it actually is because they haven't seen it yet. And so like choosing not to engage with what this film is actually saying because you want to argue that it should be saying something different when you haven't actually seen it yet, I feel like is missing the point. And I mean, that's not to say that people shouldn't have valid criticisms of this, but I just think that like where we're at right now is not meeting the film where it's at, you know?
Okay, so I'm going to be buddy reading The Sword of Kaigen with my friends Hannah and Trey, and so I thought it'd be really fun if I vlogged my experience. I am very scared, but we split it up into 4 parts, so we're going to read the entire month of March, so we have it split up. There's going to be 156 pages we can read per week, which also boils down to 21 pages per day. Sounds great to me, because let's just get into the book. Let's talk about The Sword of Kaigen feelings so far. So I just started the book, and so far I am really loving it. It really starts off very strong. Honestly, it has like an anime feeling. I feel like Misaki is such a strong female character. I also really like Mamoru, and I like that we're following 2 characters from the same family, especially like a woman in like this patriarchal society. I'm just very excited to see like where this book is gonna go. So I am 50% into The Sword of Kaigen. I just read chapter 16. Y'all, chapter 16 really ruined me. Like, I was not expecting that. Misaki is one of my favorite characters ever, and that's why I love reading women authors, because the female main character never fucking lacks. I really like Emma Wang. I really like her writing. I really like the way that she writes a story, the way that she tells a story, the way that she does an action scene. Like, I'm never once bored with the story. I'm always wanting to know more. Okay, so I finished The Sword of Kaigen, and I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really loved it. I had a lot of fun. I really like the way that it's written, and I can't wait to read more by Emma Wang. I really love the topic of women and like how Misaki was like such a strong character, but at the end of the day, she was like boiled down to just being a woman. Like, it didn't matter how strong she was because she was a woman. And I also like the topic of like children and like the loss of a child, and the loss of like children at like different stages. I'm trying to say that without spoiling. But yeah, I didn't give it 5 stars just simply because like 5 stars is just something that like, I'm absolutely obsessed with. Like, it just hits. Like, I don't know, I obviously recommend it to everyone, just like I have a different rating system. So let's talk about the 20 books that I read in March. So I am a little bit late. I had a tough beginning of April, y'all. I wanted to film this just because first book that I read is The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wang. I had a lot of fun with this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really love the way that Misaki was written, and I really love the topic of like being a woman, but also being really strong, and like once you become a mother, that really doesn't matter anymore. I read Dead Silence, which I ended up giving 2 out of 5 stars. I feel like this, like, what ended up happening in the ending wasn't what I was expecting because of how the book started off. Like, I don't know how to say that without spoilers, but basically, yeah. I read The Black Sun, which I gave like 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really love the female main character in this, and like pirates and mermaids, because that definitely was what I was in the mood for. But like, it just felt like something was missing, and I'm scared to move on in the series because I know that like the second book has second book syndrome, and so I think I'm just gonna wait to like read until the last book is out to finish the series. I reread Dune Messiah, which I think I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really read this one because Dune came out, Dune Part 2, and I didn't really feel like rereading that big ass book, so I just reread this small little tiny one. I love this story, honestly. I read Fake Blood, which is a graphic novel, but it's like 320 pages, so it's the length of an actual full book. And it's about this boy whose crush loves vampires, so he tricks her into believing that she's a vampire. But then there's also like so many twists and turns, and it gets a little bit serious. And it's also just about like he's a middle grade, so it's about growing up and your body changing, and everyone around you is changing and you're not, kind of. And I wish I had this when I was in middle school, basically. This is so freaking cute. Like, I also read Sagas Volume 1 through 4, but I only have 1 and 2. I've owned this for years, and for some reason just never, like, I read the first book but I didn't care about it. I think because I wasn't really into sci-fi when I first read it. So I for some reason decided to reread it, and I had a lot of fun. It just was so much space sci-fi. It's about these two different people, and their people are at war, and so they end up falling in love with each other and having a baby while they're on the run. And I loved it. I read Ender's Game, and I honestly thought this was very silly, to be honest. Because, like, the fact that it's about children being put into, like, this, like, space military, but in the book, the author states that, like, there aren't many women. It's not that there aren't any. There aren't many women in this military because we haven't, like, evolution was against us. Like, we hadn't evolved. But I'm like, okay, but it wasn't silly it's like, basically, it's unimaginable for women to be in the military, but it's not unimaginable for children. And it's just like, you gotta be some type of misogynist for that. And then I Googled the author, and when I tell you the allegations, then I read The City We Became and The City We Made. I gave The City We Became 4 out of 5 stars. This is very fun about New York. If the different boroughs in New York were, like, personified, and, like, how they have to come together to become, like, a single person to, like, defeat this evil. And it kind of reminds me of Transformers and, like, Power Rangers in a sense, where, like, they have to, like, come together to fight, and, like, they, like, pick up concrete to, like, fight each other. And then I read The City We Made, which I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars because I didn't think it was necessary. I'm not a series girly, so when I read a book and I feel like it's unnecessary, I'm gonna say it. Like, I'm sorry. I started off the month reading Thornhedge. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. It's supposed to be like a princess who's trapped in a tower, but you get the perspective of, like, the little fairy outside of the tower. And honestly, there's a reason why fairy tales are written about princesses and not the other characters, because I also read Psycho the Rebel by Stephen King. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I love this. It's like a graphic novel. It's promoted as a graphic novel, but girl, there's a lot of reading there. Like, I think if you were somebody who's like, oh, I want to read a quick little graphic novel and just look at the pictures, don't read this, because there's like 4 pictures in this whole book. Like, I don't know why it's promoted as a graphic novel, just because it has pictures in it. It's more like an illustrated version, but whatever. I still really liked it. If you love, like, Teen Wolf, like season 1 of Teen Wolf, this book is very reminiscent of that. Like, I loved it. I also read another graphic novel. This is my month for reading graphic novels. I read Vox Machina, which is a D&D campaign, but they turned it into a graphic novel, and then they turned it into, like, a Amazon Prime TV show. So I watched 1 episode of the Amazon show, and I loved it. So I was like, let me tune into the graphic novel. Didn't love it. Didn't love it. But I love these characters in this world. So I also read I Hope This Doesn't Find You. 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this book. Academic rivals to lovers, excellent. The angst was there. Everything happened perfectly. Like, everything happened at the right moment. So perfect. I also read Dune graphic novel because I was like, I really wanted to read, like, Dune, but not read Dune. So I read the graphic novel. I've already read Dune, but I wanted to read Dune without having to reread it. So I decided to read the graphic novel. Girl, this was boring. This was so boring. Like, I read Lovecraft Country, and I gave that 2 out of 5 stars. I just feel like the author is a white man, and the story is about Black people. And I'm not saying that you can't write a specific story about race just because you aren't that race, but I just feel like this story in particular wasn't the author's story to tell. And it just made me, like, every time I just read it, I was just like, but this is the author is, you know? So that's just my personal feelings. I also read the Big Door Prize because I watched the TV show. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. My issue with reading things just because I watched the TV or adaptions is that if I watch the TV show and I like something in the adaptation and then I go and I read the book and it's not in the book, I'm gonna get pissed off because why? So, like, there's some things that happen in this book, some changes that, like, actually needed to happen, and I love that they happened, and I think it works better in the TV show. So obviously the TV show is great. The book was fun as well. I get into my Game of Thrones era, so I read the Rise of the Dragon, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars, and Blood and Fire, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. These are literally the exact same story. The Rise of the Dragon is just the condensed version because it's like more so about like the illustrations and things like that, and like just like a fun little history book, whereas Fire and Blood is like, here's the history book. So if you want to read House of the Dragon, you have to read Fire and Blood. And honestly, the plot line is about 150 pages of what happens in here. I also read A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars. It's not necessarily something that like I find joy reading, to be honest, but it was fine. It was still really good. Like, I also read A Game of Thrones, and I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. It was so much fun. It was so similar to like the first season of the TV show, which is what I was excited for, because I love being in a character's head. And so throughout the show, I just kept thinking like, oh, I wish I was in this character's head. Like, I wish I knew what they were thinking when this moment happened. And the book provided exactly just that. You know what I don't get? Why do people hate like Sansa Stark? Like, obviously everyone is entitled to like their own opinion and to like whatever characters they want to like, but it's like, how do you watch Sansa go through everything that she went through and be like, you know what, I hate this girl. Like, oh my gosh, this girl is so annoying. Like, Sansa is one of the most smartest people in the show, and I honestly think you have to be smart yourself in order to realize that, because a lot of the stuff that she says and does is obviously very calculated. Like, the way that she like always says how she loves Joffrey, we know that girl does not love Joffrey. He's a monster, but she knows the best way for her to stay alive is to say that she does. And like, even I was like reading this post and it was saying like, oh, I don't get why people hate Sansa, and then they were like, well, after season 5 I get it. I don't get that either, because obviously the way that she reacted to everything, the girl was held hostage, was sold off, had to live in her hometown, essentially had to live in her home, period, with her family being gone, and basically under the guise of being kidnapped and held hostage, seeing that this man that was like, and like finding out that Ramsay was evil is traumatic for like everybody. Like, it was traumatic for me, so I know it was traumatic for her. And like, I get that like a lot of people probably hate her for how she treated Daenerys, which honestly, anything that happened season 7 and season 8 is not canon to me, because I don't think that like Sansa would ever react to Daenerys like that. Like, I think that they actually would have really liked each other. Come on, like, these are two girls who had to grow up without their families, like watching their father. Well, I guess Daenerys didn't watch her father, but like knowing with what the Lannisters like did to her father, and like same with Sansa, it's like there's no way that these two girls who had to practically raise themselves and pick themselves off the ground would hate each other. Like, there's no way. Like, I'm sorry, I don't believe that. And like I said, you're entitled to like or not like whoever you want, but I just don't know how you could see like Sansa grow up and under the circumstances that she was. And like, yeah, okay, her and Arya like were annoying like as sisters, but like, first of all, they were split up for like half the show, and second of all, they're sisters. Like, me and my sister get along very well. We don't argue like that, but when I see other sisters argue, I'm like, oh, okay, that's very understandable, because not all siblings get along. The only reason why me and my sister get along is because we come from a long generation. Well, not the only reason, but the main reason why me and my sister get along is because we come from a long generation of watching our like our elders like get along. Like, my mom and my uncle are close, my grandma and her sister are close. Like, we come from a long line of like close like siblinghood, but not every sibling is gonna be like that, you know. And I just don't understand like why people I don't understand. Like, there are so many annoying characters in the show. Like, after reading the book, I love Jon after season 5, like after, you know, his resurrection or whatever. I loved him because like he was already broody, but the broodiness after that was just, it ate to me. But after reading the books, I kind of like side-eyeing Jon, like, who is this guy? Because the book, Jon, oh, he eats now. So it's like, I could understand if like the characters were different in the books than they were like the show, like how Jon is. Like, I could understand not liking the character for that, but it's just like, I don't know, like what did Sansa do to piss y'all off? Basically, I guess is my final question, because I don't find her annoying. I think she's a very strong character. I think she's very smart. I think she's the smartest person in the show. Definitely smarter than Cersei. Now, that's a character I can't stand. I think that Cersei is so... Like, after what happened to her, I think it was season 5. Sorry, everything is a blur. After what happened to her, and I think it was season 5, like, I started to understand her a lot more. But then, like, that immediately went away. I think that Cersei is not a smart character at all. She's very... Well, I don't think she's dumb, but she's very, like, short-sighted. Whereas I think Sansa, like, literally thinks of the longevity of things. And sometimes that can kind of, like... I guess sometimes that can kind of, like... get in the way of things if you're thinking of like the long issues and not like the now, but like not even all the time. Like, I don't know, I just don't understand, like, how could you hate my girl? Like, that's my... And I love Daenerys, like, Daenerys is my girl too. I just don't believe that they would ever hate each other. Like, the writers, you can tell that George R.R. Martin was doing all the work, because there's no way that Sansa and Daenerys would hate each other. How did fandom culture get where it is today? Like, fandom culture is so toxic and just filled with, like, people hating on, like, characters, people hating on... Which is, like, fine. But, like, it's just so different, because I've been in this community for a very long time. I got in, like, fandom culture, like, when I was, like, 12. My very first Twitter account was, like, a stan account for a celebrity that I don't stan anymore, so I'm not gonna mention it. I had a Justin Bieber fan account for years, and then it turned into, like, Teen Wolf, and then, like, Pretty Little Liars for, like, very briefly. It was mainly Teen Wolf, and, like, literally whatever. I've always been a multi-fandom girly, actually, because, like, the Justin Bieber and Teen Wolf overlapped, for sure. But I've always been a multi-fandom girly, and it's, like, I used to love interacting with the fandom, and now all I got is my side blog Tumblr account. I don't follow anybody, because you can't follow anybody on side blogs. I don't follow anybody. I don't interact with, like, the dashboard. I literally go through the search bar. I will search the hashtag of whatever I'm obsessed with at the moment. And that's how I, like, reblog things. Which is, like, so funny, because if you go through my Tumblr, it's just, like, this media, and then, like, you get to the bottom, and it's, like, a random TV show, and then, like, a random movie, like, series. Like, it's so crazy. But it's just, like, I can't interact with, like, the fandom. Like, when I got obsessed with Star Wars last year, I really could not, like, seeing how, like, racist and misogynistic, but actually any fandom that's, like, men are mostly the fandom, is, like, always, unfortunately, always going to be, like, very... Okay, I can't say always. I want to, but I'm not going to, because I know people are going to argue with me about it. Are usually very toxic, like, misogynistic, sexist... That's the same, not whatever, you know what I'm trying to say, racist. Oh my gosh. But it's not just that though, because I was like I said, I was a Teen Wolf account, and, like, back to, like, my video that went viral a few months ago about how, like, whenever there's a black girl casted in a TV show, instead of shipping her with the white guy, they ship the white guy with, like, another gay person, even if it's not, like, canon. And, like, that exact same thing happened in the Teen Wolf fandom. Like, when Brayden came along, so many people were hating on the actress, which, like, why not hate on the... If you shouldn't hate on anybody, but if you're going to, why not hate on the writer? Especially because Jeff Davis deserved it. But whatever. Because Brayden was getting in the way of, like, their ship, Derek, which was... Derek was a grown-ass man, and Styles was somebody in high school, so... But I mean, hey, if you love it, if you like it, I love it, whatever. But, like, hating on the black actress because she was getting in the way of the ship that the writer was, like, you know, never gonna make a thing. Why? But that was just, like, racism was, unfortunately, racism is something that you're always going to experience in a fandom, especially if your favorite character is a black person, or you are a black person, or whatever. So I learned, like, from a very young age to kind of take a step back from fandom culture. But, like, even just, like, watching from, like, afar, it is so toxic. Like, no matter what fandom I am joining or obsessing with, there's always going to be people arguing about literally the dumbest shit ever. And at the core, it's always misogyny and racism. Like, with the House of the Dragon, I don't know why I put the in front of it. With House of the Dragon, I've been, like, really obsessed with that, and Game of Thrones, but House of the Dragon is, like, having seasons come out, and the way that people, girl, let me not even get into that, because I can make a whole video on, like, the racism and It's crazy. But basically my question is, how did fandom culture get here? How did we get here? Like, the way, like, how nasty it is. I do believe it is like 2020, like that is, the lockdown is unfortunately the source of all of our problems. Like, I saw a post that said that they think it mainly stemmed from like normal people who weren't like nerds or people into fandom culture. They kind of start to get into like fandom culture because they had nothing else to do, and they brought that like nasty like normal people energy with them. But not like the normal people energy, but like they didn't learn like fandom etiquette, so like they brought that like normal people energy with them and kind of like ruined the fandom. But also I think it was 2020 in general, like the way that the internet has been since 2020 has not been the same. Like, you could comment something completely innocent and somebody's gonna argue with you. Somebody's gonna think that you're being mean or you're being mad, and they're gonna argue. They're gonna sit there and they're gonna argue with you, or they're gonna catch an attitude with you, or say something rude to you. Or like, even if like you make a comment that comes off as rude, instead of because it will never have anything to do with them, but instead of just like ignoring it, they always have to like argue. Like, people on the internet always have to argue. Like, if you look at Twitter is just like just nasty. Like, people literally take TikToks and post them on Twitter just so they can have people be mean to them. People will literally take a TikTok that you can't, like, they will screen record it and then post it on Twitter so that other people can be mean with them. Like, the internet since 2020 has just not been the same. And I also think that also takes a part in fandom culture. But it's just so sad, like, being someone who's been in this community, not this community, but who's been in fandom communities since I was like 12, for about a decade and some change, and like see where it ended. It's like it's so unfortunate, because the arguments that people have are so unnecessary. Like, if you just put your phone down, and I guess because like for me, I kind of just think of it as like little people on my phone, like people who don't exist. Like, once I turn my phone off, you're not real. Especially if I can block you, because I can. So it's like you don't exist to me. You know? So it's like, maybe that's why for me I kind of just don't care. But it's really unfortunate, basically.
Sorry, I really hate that, like, Zach Justice podcaster, because he's literally just makes racist and misogynistic jokes. And then he's like, this is satire, or it's a character. And so then everyone just lets him make racist and misogynistic jokes. Like, nobody else thinks that's weird. And that's not, like, I feel like satire doesn't work as well when you're punching down, because he's a white man. If it was a black woman, okay, like, I see how you could pass that off as satire. It's also your own experience. Or, like, you know, if it's, like, women who are making jokes about men, like, you're punching up in that sense. It's just really weird to, like, and he has women, like, frequently come on his podcast, like, women with large followings, and they kind of sit there, and he just says misogynistic shit about them the whole time. I've had he's pissed me off for a while, but like that Fanita thing where he made that weird racist joke, and first of all, that's not even, you can't think of anything better than that. Like, oh, we turn off the lights, I can't see you because you're black. Oh, boo, boo, lame, get off the stage. Like, people were coming up with that in first grade, and you should be creative at least. Like, it does not come off as satirical from you. That's the thing. And I, like, every time, and it's annoying because he keeps showing up places because everybody loves Tara. And I think Tana Mojo also goes on his podcast sometimes. So, like, then now he's showing up more because I guess they hang out or whatever. Oh my God, he pisses me off really bad.
Adult books have adult content. Books marketed towards adult often have adults doing adult things, and this includes the nasty. I've been seeing all these videos and all this discourse on how Book Talk is promoting prawn because it includes like adult material in these books. And I don't read enough to call myself a part of Book Talk. Like, I don't keep up with the trends enough to be a part of Book Talk, but I have been reading adult books for a while. And yeah, a lot of them have graphic content, but it's not because every girl is just like so addicted and just can't read anything else. And oh no, it's no different than like cutting on like a show on HBO. Eventually, adults on that show do the adult thing. Same thing in books. Now, there was a conversation to be had about the people who like refuse to read anything that isn't spicy, or like look out even in YA books for the spice and then get upset that it's not in there even though it's a YA book, or like leave negative reviews because it has no spice. Like, that is a separate issue. But just because adult books have spice and readers, women especially, enjoy those scenes and enjoy spice doesn't mean they're a bunch of addicts walking about. And in fact, saying that over and over again just reinforces this idea that women are supposed to be like virginal and pure and never have these thoughts and desires, and make that part of themselves like inaccessible and shameful and dirty. Like, it's weird. Like, their books, at the end of the day, some have plots that are deep and complex, some have plots that are light and fluffy. Regardless, if there are two adult characters falling in love, you'll probably get a graphic scene or two or three, and that's fine. It is literally no different than cutting on a TV show or cutting on a movie and having the knowledge that eventually in your adult TV show that adults will probably do that thing at some point. Y'all are taking this to really weird places. Just either read the books and enjoy, or don't. And keep your judgment to yourselves. Have a good day. By now, we've likely all heard of the Alabama Supreme Court ruling that gives personhood to frozen embryos, which completely shakes up the world of IVF and our understanding of a way forward. But the life-altering Supreme Court cases don't stop there, because why should we catch a break? In fact, on March 26, yes, March 26, the U.S. Supreme Court started hearing a case from Texas, and the fate of mifepristone hangs in the balance. So if you didn't know, mifepristone is a safe and effective medication given for abortions and miscarriages. It's been given to millions of people since it was first approved by the FDA like 20 years ago. In fact, it's still commonly used in states that still allow for abortions, including Planned Parenthood health centers. But this case is threatening to change all of that by trying to get the FDA to reverse its initial approval of mifepristone. And if that works, not only will it devastate the landscape of sexual and reproductive health by ripping away a safe and private method of abortion, but it will completely upend the research process and medical approval process. If this works, it will upend and undermine decades of medical science searching for ways to make reproductive health care safer. But we can't sit around and just wait to see what happens. So instead, make sure that you and your friends and your friends' friends and your friends' friends' friends all sign the People's Brief and tell the Supreme Court to protect this safe and effective medication. You know how mind-blowingly racist you have to be that your hate gaslights a whole group of people into thinking a new movie's coming out? Because when I first heard that Avantika was getting all of this hate for her role as Rapunzel in Tangled, I ran to Google. Because yes, we're boycotting Disney, but that doesn't mean we can't Google questions that they don't make money off of. And I'm looking to see who else is in the cast, or when they announced that a live-action Tangled was coming. Turns out y'all are mad over a fan cast. A fan cast! Imagine how shocked I was. And the wildest part is, like, white folk, y'all did it to yourselves. When y'all decided that whiteness was the standard for human existence, and so you stopped telling stories that were specific to like culture or ethnicity or nationality and just started telling human experience stories, your characters became easy to swap out with other races, because other races also have lived human experiences. Redhead fish girl trades voice for legs in pursuit of man. Girl with evil stepfamily wants to go out, falls in love with a guy more interested in feet than faces. Girl with long hair seeks freedom, falls in love with thief. Like, anyone can do this. But you can't swap white characters in for characters of color, partially because why would you want to? You have enough stories, but also because they don't make sense. No, you can't swap Tiana out for a white girl because Tiana's whole plot line is based on the fact that she can't get her restaurant because she's black and a woman in the South. No, you can't swap Pocahontas out for a white girl because Pocahontas is a story about an indigenous woman who was real, by the way. Mulan, Moana, Jasmine, they're all culture-specific stories. But y'all stopped telling those, so you became easy to swap out. And then to avoid the labor of making creative, new, culturally sensitive stories, Disney just started making the cast diverse to say that they were diverse. And this isn't to say that Avantika wouldn't do a good job, because she absolutely would. And the idea of an Indian Rapunzel absolutely eats. But y'all don't even care about the cultural significance of Rapunzel. You just want her to be blonde. And I know that because y'all's fan casts include Taylor Swift. And she can't act. Anyway, y'all did it to yourselves, and the fact that you're mad about it so much that you gaslit people into thinking there's a new movie coming out is wild. Anyway, y'all support Avantika's real new movie that she has coming out. Ignoring the historical, cultural, and social implications of y'all writing this hard for a blonde-haired German girl to play Rapunzel, y'all do know that the original Rapunzel that y'all keep citing isn't the original Rapunzel, right? This German version of Rapunzel that y'all keep citing isn't the original version, it's an adaptation. That adaptation was written by the Grimm brothers, popularized in like 1812 or something, but the Grimm brothers are credited for adapting and popularizing a whole host of fairy tales, but they didn't write them. They picked them up and changed them a little bit, and they got extremely popular for it. But they're not the originals. In fact, the German version of Rapunzel that the Grimm brothers wrote is based on the French telling of Rapunzel, and that telling is based on the Italian telling of Rapunzel, and all of that is based on the original Persian poem. And putting all of those things aside, the version of Rapunzel that's entangled is not German because her kingdom is Corona, which is actually not German. It's fictional. Over the course of the movie, she has no relation or connection to Germany because her kingdom is named after the sun because of the sun's role in the whole film, which is why it's so important to so many that she's blonde. But anyone can wear a wig or buy hair dye. In fact, they're going to have to wear a wig because above all else, no one has 70 feet of hair, and y'all like to just speed bump over that. But the great thing about fairy tales, at least before y'all lost y'all's minds, is that they're a great mode of cultural exchange and cultural tracing. Stories that pop up over here also pop up over here. Sometimes it's because they have similar lived experiences and tell them in similar ways. Sometimes it's because of cultural exchange. It just is what it is. And there's a reason y'all are up in arms about yet another fairy tale having a person of color in a hypothetical situation that goes beyond wanting to be true to your roots. Because the thing is, most fairy tales aren't true to their roots. They just adapt and change over time. And that's okay.
I am here to stir the Bridgerton pot once again because Penelope Featherington did no wrong in my eyes. And because you guys need a reminder because Bridgerton Season 3 Part 1 is a little less than 2 weeks away. Like I said again, Penelope Featherington did no wrong. She has done no wrong in my eyes. And any wrong that she has done, you guys were eating it up until it came to your faves. Before I get to Marina Thompson and Eloise Bridgerton's relationship with Penelope Featherington, let me just say this. Everybody loved Lady Whistledown until they didn't. And everybody loved Lady Whistledown until it came to Eloise and Marina. But if I'm going to be 100% honest, these two, Marina Thompson and Eloise, dug their own graves, okay? Oh, you're blaming them? Yes, I am. Okay, I am blaming them. First of all, with Marina, why are we shocked that Penelope wrote about Marina when Marina knew that Penelope was in love with Colin? Did you seriously expect Penelope to be like, okay, you're going to trap the person that I love with the baby, and I'm just going to be A-okay with it? I'm not saying what she did was right, but at the same time, I can't really go and blame Penelope either. Yes, Penelope knew about the baby trapping plan. She was all on board, but we cannot expect her to be okay with it when it's going to be done to somebody that she's been in love with for years. Like, I am never going to get on that boat with you guys. Now on to Miss Eloise, because I cannot stand her. This girl was all for Lady Whistledown until Lady Whistledown got her. Eloise is a bulldozer. I think we all know this by now. Penelope told her time and time again not to go and chase and try to find out who Lady Whistledown is. And rightfully so. Because not only does it implicate Eloise, but at the same time, we're not going to pretend that Eloise was not going to try to take over what Penelope got going on. And because Eloise is a bulldozer and did not listen and kept trying to find Lady Whistledown, the queen thought she was Lady Whistledown, and I believe she was going to be charged with something because of what Lady Whistledown wrote about the queen's husband, King George. So of course, to save her ass, Penelope decides to go and write something not so nice in the papers. Penelope saved Eloise. Yes, she could have told Eloise that she was Lady Whistledown the entire time. But at the same time, being Lady Whistledown was the only thing Penelope really had to herself. Penelope didn't have her mother to herself. Penelope really didn't have Eloise, her best friend, to herself because of Eloise's family and Eloise's other ambition. She never really had Colin to herself. She did have Lady Whistledown to herself. And like I said again, yes, Penelope could have told Eloise that she was Lady Whistledown, but we're not going to pretend that Eloise is not a bulldozer. We're not going to pretend that Eloise was not going to try to, really shove her foot into the Lady Whistledown door. We're not going to pretend that Eloise was not going to try to at least once or twice try to take over the entire situation that Penelope had going on. Because Eloise is nosy and because Eloise doesn't listen, she dug her own grave, which in turn led to Penelope saving her, which, saving her might be used loosely in this situation because the things that she wrote about Eloise and, friends was not really nice. But, Eloise dug her own grave. I cannot believe I forgot about that scene because that scene made me so mad. The fact that Eloise destroyed Penelope's room so that she can find proof that Penelope was Lady Whistledown, it just made me so mad. I used to never even hate Eloise like that. I thought she was a little annoying, but I never really had any like, you know, ill, like really true ill feelings towards her until she kept trying to find out who Lady Whistledown is, especially to really input some of her ideas. Like I said, Eloise is nosy and a bulldozer, and if Penelope were to tell her from the beginning that she was Lady Whistledown, you could not look me in the eye and with a straight face and tell me that Eloise would have not tried to at least once or twice overtook the entire Lady Whistledown situation or put her foot into the door. It's just no. And if we're being real, I don't think that Eloise was such a great friend. Penelope is a wallflower when she's not being Lady Whistledown. She's very like, she's kind of quiet. She's not really assertive. Like compared to Eloise is very like, she's a lot. And because she's a lot, I felt as though that Eloise was not really a good friend to Penelope. I felt a lot of the times when Eloise had a problem, Penelope was just there to listen. You know, I really didn't feel like Penelope was able to really tell her friend any of her problems and to have her listen. It honestly felt like Penelope was Eloise's sidekick for the longest time. Like I said in the previous video, Penelope really didn't have a lot of things to herself. She didn't really have her mom to herself. Her two older sisters made sure of that. She never really had her best friend Eloise to herself because of Eloise's personality, her family, and just Eloise's ambitions. She never really had Colin to herself. Colin was too busy talking smack about how he would never get with Penelope. Lady Whistledown was the only thing that she really had to herself. Eloise better just blow me away in this upcoming season or the next season, or I'm just gonna be a forever Eloise hater.